Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for the little delay. We had some technical problems with the line to Moscow. As you can imagine, it's still not easy with the technique. My name is Gemma Pörzgen. I'm a German journalist here in Berlin, also freelancing and working as a chief editor for a small journal which is called East-West European Perspectives. But I would like to tell you who are my guests here today on the panel, because as you see, we have a line now to Moscow, and I say welcome to Andrei Kolesnikov. Здравствуйте, добрый день, вы нас слышите? Do you hear us? So what? Okay, we will figure this out, or the technique will still figure it out. Yeah. After the panel we had just now with a very interesting discussion, we will talk now about perspectives on Russia's war against Ukraine today. And our panel will focus on the changing roles of Ukraine, Russia, Poland, and Germany in international politics. How do those countries see themselves and others 1 year after the beginning of Russia's invasion into Ukraine, and how do traditional visions of the European order influence contemporary relations on our continents? And I will try again to present my guests, but perhaps I just start here on the panel. Welcome to Anna Kwiatkowska. She was born in 1969 in Warsaw. She's a founder and head of the German department at the think tank Center for Eastern Studies in Warsaw. And she studied Arabic at Tashkent University in Uzbekistan and at the University in Vienna. And she did her PhD in political science in Warsaw. Afterwards, she worked for several years as chief specialist at the Department for International Cooperation of the Polish Ministry of Interior and Administration, where she was responsible for German-Polish relations. Welcome. Also here to my right, we have Hans Christian Petersen, born in 1972 in Borken. He is a lecturer at the Federal Institute for Culture and History of the Germans in Eastern Europe and at the University in Oldenburg. Previously, he was a guest professor for migration and integration of the Russian Germans at Osnabrück University, and he studied Eastern European history, Slavic literature, and political science in Kiel and Kaliningrad, where he did his habilitation in 2016. Now I hope that our guests from Moscow can hear us. It's Andrei Kolesnikov. Just a minute, I have to look for my card. Hello? What about the line? And I look for my card. He was born in 1965 in Moscow. He is a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace in Moscow, and Kolesnikov also works with the Gaidar Institute for Economic Policy. His research focuses on the major trends shaping Russian domestic politics, with a particular focus on ideological shifts inside Russian society. He was previously the managing editor of Novaya Gazeta newspaper and served as deputy editor-in-chief of Izvestia and the New Times. He has written several books and is a prominent columnist in international media, and I hope after my presentation that he can hear us. What does the technique say? Hallo? Kann die Technik mir mal sagen, ob die Leitung funktioniert jetzt?
Now I hear it.
Ah, very good. So sorry. It made me really nervous that there was no connection. Because I just wanted to start with you, Andrei Kolesnikov. Thank you very much for being with us. These days, it's a rare opportunity to speak with somebody in Moscow. And therefore, I would like to ask you in the beginning to share some thoughts with us how people in Russia today look towards the West, because in the first panel we started actually talking about the other perspective. So please take like about 3 minutes for a first input. Thank you.
Yes, thanks a lot for the invitation. I would say that if you're talking about contemporary vision of the West, not historical one, the West is the enemy for sure. And this is a consequence of more or less new doctrine, which is rooted in history of foreign policy doctrines, in the history of Stalin's doctrines, and in perception of the West as a permanent source of attacks on Russia. And if we should talk generally about the narrative, current historical narrative and its roots, we have to notice that the Russian doctrine of historical policy is based. It corresponds to the well-known Russian anecdote. The question, with whom does Russia border? The answer is with whom it wants to border. And paradoxically, this joke is the most adequate description of Putin's doctrine, which is a weak reflection of so-called Brezhnev doctrine, according to which the zones of influence of the Soviet Union are all those territories where the Soviet soldier has set foot. And we are talking for sure about, let's name it, Stalin's doctrine, about those territories which were occupied by the Soviet Union after the Finnish Winter War, and after Stalin divided the zones of influence with Hitler, according to the Pact Molotov-Ribbentrop, that is primarily the Baltic states, Eastern Poland. And you know that right now, intuitively, current leaders of Russia, they almost literally repeat the Stalin-Molotov narrative of 1939, 1940, 1945, in order to justify the invasion of Ukraine in 2022. In the case of, for instance, the Finnish War of 1939, it was spoken of a defensive war, and that the USSR was not at war with Finland as such, but with unworthy government of Finland, which was a tool of England and France. Absolutely the same story right now with Ukraine and with the collective West, which leads Ukrainians, and this is not war against Ukrainians. And in the case of Poland, it was about liberating our brothers, so-called, the Western Belarusians and Western Ukrainians in 1940, from oppression of Polish pans. The same story right now with Ukraine. We are liberating our brothers from, let's say, bad regime in Ukraine. So in that sense, now the special operation isn't war with Ukraine, but an effort to protect Russia and our brothers from collective West. You know that Eastern Europe, the Baltics, and Moldova in this concept are assigned the place of junior partners of the West and satellites of the United States. Of course, in the imaginary Russian axis of evil, Poland, part of the Czech Republic after the demolition of the monument to Marshal Konev in Prague, and the Baltic states occupy key positions. In Stalinist concept, these territories simply were Soviet zones of influence and buffer state protected the empire from the West. And Putin considered at least Ukraine as a buffer state of this kind. All this means a return to empire ideology, Stalinist ideology, and the permanent reinterpretation of the essence of historical events. So maybe I'll stop myself here because I'm speaking more than 3 minutes.
Thank you. there will be more opportunities to talk in our debate then. And now I would like to switch to Anna, to her input, which will deal with the Polish perspective. And please.
Thank you for the invitation. First of all, I would like to thank you, Mr. Portnow, for his amazing and light. Concerning these topics, so let me start with some reflection about the politics, the strategy of Germany towards Central and Eastern Europe. To make a long story short and briefly answer the question which is hidden in the title of our panel, I would say the approach to Central and Eastern Europe of Germany was mistaken. To explain this, I'm going to present the three main strategic failures of German policy concerning this subject. First of all, which is obvious, I hope, for everyone, now it's the Russia first policy of Germany. Germany let Putin know that whatever he does, Germany is willing to continue cooperation on the business level and political, even security level with Putin. Even after Syria, annexation of Crimea, Donbass, cyber attacks on Bundestag, assassination in Tiergarten, after everything like this, Germany was Germany's priority was to continue dealing with Russia. So the second and the third failure of German approach to Central and Eastern Europe are connected to the first one. Of course, the second is about German attitude towards Ukraine. Ukraine doesn't really, I agree with you, exist as a subject to Germany till 2022. The Germans fell into the trap of Russian propaganda and maybe unconsciously treated Ukraine as a non-state, non-nation, and to quote Professor Snyder, the invasion of 2014 was a great success of Russian foreign policy in terms of muddling the story about this and made it unclear. The Germans picked this story up. Ukraine was never a real state. Ukrainians are not a real people. And even if they are a state, they are about to fail. And even if they are people, then all are corrupt. And by the way, they are all Nazis. End of quotation. So this was really a wrong approach to Ukraine. It is rooted, of course, in history, because after the Second World War, Russia monopolized this role of main victor and the main victim, and it was after the war, and it was a common view also in Germany. was that it meant that Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact was taboo. The Ukrainians, Belarusians who losses were much greater than Russians disappeared from the memory of Germans, and it was very convenient to make friends and make business with Russia, even on the cost of Ukraine, of course. And everyone remembered this high-level politicians, German politicians, talking about 23 million Russians victim and promoting special relations with Russia, even Nord Stream 2, with this story, with this narrative. And now the third failure, and it will be the end of the input, it is concerning Poland and other countries, especially on the eastern flank. The main failure from my point of view was to focus, highlight the relation with third country, namely Russia, over the interest, economical interest, security interest, over the interest of allies. So we were, thank you also to Germany, allies in EU project and European Union and in the NATO. And despite of the fact, Germany continued to highlight and went over this closest allies' interest and prioritize the interest doing business with Russia. So it was really these three failures are, from our perspective, the main, and we need the reflection, the revision of the German politics. I hope the begin is done with this Zeitenwende proclamation of Scholz, but we will see how it will end. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask Hans Christian Petersen to talk about a topic where he really knows a lot, about the diaspora, the Russian-speaking diaspora, if you want so, in Germany and their perspective.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. First of all, talking about the Russian-speaking diaspora means talking about the terms. Is it good to talk about the diaspora? I'm not sure about that. Maybe we can discuss this later. Diaspora is a disputed term in this context, of course. And the Russian-speaking as well, because most of the people I will talk about are not only Russian-speaking, and most of all, Russian-speaking means not Russian. Yeah, that's not the same. So maybe I talk about post-Soviet migrants. These are terms. We also had this in the first panel, post-Soviet. We can talk about this later. I use it as a scientific term. I will explain why, and we can discuss about these terms later. To make clear how, very shortly with 3 words, how many people I know from the post-Soviet migrants living here in Germany today, how are they since February 24th last year? They are torn, they are agitated, and they are angry. And I will explain why. First of all, just to give you a figure, until February last year, there were about 3.5 million post-Soviet migrants, if we take this term, living here in Germany, which means people coming from Russia, from Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, and so on. And since the beginning of the whole aggression of Russia against Ukraine, in February last year, it's more than 1 million, of course, refugees have come here from Ukraine and people who left Russia and so on. So we are talking about the biggest migrant group in the German society. In academia, we talk about post-Soviet migrants in order to make comparison possible, not to separate these groups, but to take all the groups together and to be able to compare them. This doesn't mean that I use this term because it's the self-understanding of the people. It's not, okay? It's a difference, of course. There are many differences between, 4.5 million people. Of course, these are very individual biographies, very different stories, very different groups, but there are also some things they have all in common, and one thing is many of them know what war is about, and many of them did know what will be, at least since 2014, and many of them know for many years what Putin's Russia stands for and what will come, and it has come like this. So there have been voices in Germany who have said, okay, listen to us, we know this very complex post-Soviet space, we know about the development that can come, but the point is, and we had this already in the first panel, they weren't listened here in Germany. They are listened more now since February last year, but until then, it was rather people like Gabriele Krone-Schmalz or Sarah Wagenknecht sitting in every TV talk show and sending Putin's propaganda, but the people from the post-Soviet states who know much better what can come, they weren't heard. That's really a problem. And it was Andrei Portnoy who raised the question if we should talk about colonialism. Yes, of course, we have to. I'm just talking about a German colonial perspective on so-called Eastern Europe, which is focused on Russia. We can also discuss why, but it is like this. But we also have to talk about Russian colonialism. Of course we have. This would be my answer. The question is, why isn't this done here in Germany? Why is it such a blind spot in the post-colonial discussions? I have some answers to this, but maybe we can come back to this. 2 last points. These 4.5 million people have been called the invisible big migrant group here in Germany. This has changed, of course. The war has made them visible. But many of them have been waiting at the train stations, have been helping the refugees. They have translated the complicated German formulas and so on. But at the same time, there are very harsh conflicts in the families because there is also a smaller part, but there is a part of these post-migrant groups who support Putin's Russia's war. And these are hard conflicts, separating families, separating friends, online and offline. And so the war is also here in this sense, in the families and the people living here in Germany. And my last point, I will come to an end then, terms and differentiations in the time of war. I started with this formulation, post-Soviet migrants. And I know about the complications using this term right now, at least since February last year. I mean, a genocidal war like this of Russia and Ukraine, it requires partisanship, in my opinion. There is no neutrality. So of course, we have to take partisanship. What does this mean for our terms in academia, in the science? Is it possible to talk about broader perspectives like post-Soviet or imperial context and so on? Or is it something that is not possible right now and has to be postponed? I don't know, it's just an open question, but there is a discussion going on in the German academia dealing with Eastern Europe about this question. Okay, probably too long, thank you.
No, that was fine. Thank you very much. Now we enter into the debate, and I hope Andrei Kolesnikov is still with us, because I would like to ask you, you heard the harsh critique of Anna Kwiatkowska about the Russian first policy in Germany, and I would be interested how you see this critique from your perspective. Because it was also a different time at that time, so the goals were different, and I would be interested in your position. Is he still there?
Yes.
Yes.
I must say that we must divide different questions. The perception of Germany in Russia several years ago partners, in an economic sense primarily, but maybe in political sense as well. At the same time, when being asked which countries are more attractive to Russians, according to polls, people said that the first place for sure is China, then Belarus, paradoxically, as an example.
understood here?
Okay, firstly, I would pick up to what Kolesnikov said. It was very interesting for me. He talked about the perception in Russia, and there was a sentence, Germany became a part of the West now. Is this not interesting, really? Because I think it is, I am happy about this, that it became a part of West now, but we have to be aware that Germany was not perceived like this in Central and Eastern Europe, and even not in Russia. Maybe Germany took the role of mediator, very convenient, both sides, sowohl als auch Diplomatie, you know this. This was very convenient. You could control the process of, for example, negotiation as a mediator, but you were not the one part or the another. You know, mediator is not the West. What about Westbindung, which was so?
But it's a unified country with two parts, which one part was the GDR, as you know.
If you are a mediator, you are not the part, this part and nor this part. This is a very dangerous situation for example, for me. I am a Western country. So if you are a mediator, now it has changed. The narrative now is Brückenbauer. Nice, much more intelligent. But I think the same is hidden in this.
But I don't understand what is the problem about Brückenbauer or
Brückenbauer is much more intelligent than mediator. I told you what is the problem with mediator. If you are a mediator, you are not a part of something, of the one of this. I want Germany to be a part of West, not a mediator between West and East. This is crucial. This was the first remarks, and the second was about the narratives. Yeah, of course, this is of course very dangerous for the public, the audience, so in society in Germany to be so influenced by this narrative. We have discussed in last panel about this thing about pacifism. Yeah? This is real dangerous, because what Hitler got after World War II was defeat, was not peace. And in these terms, we have to discuss this war nowadays. So peace is for a defeated country who was forced to negotiate. So that's why I think this is a dangerous narrative now in Germany, but not only in Germany. We've heard about Slovakia, and even in Poland this is maybe not popular, but there are people thinking like this. From my perspective, the most important thing is what political elite, business elite is thinking, because especially what Chancellor is thinking and SPD as a ruling party, and even much more what are the people around Olaf Scholz are thinking, because they have in the constitution this power to create foreign policy of Germany. So if you are these narratives in society, okay, let's be. But if Chancellor is going to act like led by these narratives, this is dangerous thing for me. So
what do you expect them to think?
Whom?
Olaf Scholz and so on.
Olaf Scholz. I don't dare to advise him, but I would say listen to your coalitioners. So maybe it's better to listen to what the Greens, which are the only party not involved in these connections, Russian connections. Maybe here listen to FDP Marie Agnes Strack-Zimmermann regarding delivering weapons. Maybe more discussion in the government. It will be good for your democracy.
Do you agree?
Yes, I do. I'm not the one defending the politics of the SPD, definitely not, but maybe we should add, at least when we're talking about the Social Democrats in Germany, one more point, the tradition of Ostpolitik, because I think this has to do something with the situation we are in. And it shouldn't, I think, because the Ostpolitik in the 1970s by Willy Brandt and others was a different thing, I think. At this time we had the Soviet Union with the, and the people, the countries of the so-called Warsaw bloc, they were dominated by Moscow. So there is a reason to address Moscow first, and Willy Brandt has also been in Warsaw and so on, as we all know. So it is a different thing, but I think I have the impression, I may be wrong, but it's my impression that this still plays a role in the way some people of the Social Democrats are acting today, but we have a completely different situation today. We have free countries since 30 years who have decided their own way. Ukraine going in the direction of EU, and I hope so in the direction of NATO. This is their own choice. There is no need to address Moscow and to ask them anything about what these countries should do or not. So maybe to put it more positive, maybe this war, as terrible as it is, it could be a chance to create a new Ostpolitik, a common Ostpolitik with Poland, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Germany, and so on, and Ukraine together against Russia, and to have a common position. Maybe this would be but this wouldn't be the same like in the 1970s.
Perhaps a question again to Andrei Kolesnikov. Is he back? I don't see him. I mean, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, very good. I would like to know about. You heard what our participants here said on the panel, and how, what do you think about the narrative towards Europe? Because so far Europe has been quite unified in its policy towards Russia. Do you think that there is a big interest in the Putin regime to split and to have this, more conflicts between the partners in the European Union?
For Putin, any conflict inside the European Union is a gift. But right now, he's a problematic position because really, even from so seeing the situation from Russia, everyone sees that the European Union is united right now. And Putin can't play Byzantine games in splitting different nations, different parties inside European Union countries. This is time for more direct political process. Here is the West, here is Russia. So here is, in a new narrative, here is the war with NATO and with the collective West. So no details, no different colors. This is simply Europe. This is simply the West with the leadership of the United States. No, not more. But several years ago, I would say that it was one of the main political lines of Putin to create a split in the European Union, to create a split inside different countries in the European Union. He supported far-rightist parties in different countries. It is well known. So right now, this is not a time for this kind of details. Now the world is black and white.
And Anna Kwiatkowska, are you concerned that this unity could be fall apart? Because we see a lot of election campaigns, especially in Poland at the moment, which are quite anti-German, I would say, and this could lead to more problems between the countries here in Europe itself.
Yeah, thank you. Short remarks on Ostpolitik, because this is a very important issue for us. We in Poland don't see this as in such a positive way as it is seen in Germany. I would quote an architect of the Ostpolitik, Egon Bahr, who told us years ago, the Frieden is wichtiger as Polen. So the peace is much more important than Poland. If you want to paraphrase this and set Ukraine for Poland, it is what Ukrainians think, hearing what very important persons from, so politicians from, for example, this parliamentary faction of SPD, Munzenich, is talking about peace, Ukraine, and what is much more important. The division between the countries of West, I don't think so. It will be cause much problems. I think we let us not divide, and I think also the US, which is this country which unite the West, not the German political elite, although it will be good seen if Germany would lead this coalition. So that Americans don't want us to fight, to split. So there will be some negotiations, or they will talk to all of us to build one frontier against Russia. And what I want to add, I think countries like Germany, but not only Germany, should thought more about the division inside, in domestic politics. So, for example, fighting the narratives spreading by AfD or Die Linke. I know my focus of my job is Germany, that's why I don't talk about France, but I think there are also parties like this. So it will be much more important to confront these narratives of AfD and Die Linke, not to divide the society inside Germany and not to divide the member states of European Union.
And Hans Christian Petersen, what do you think about these divisions? I mean, also looking from the German perspective to Poland, there's still a peace government in power, which is very criticized for in the European Union as well. It's not that the German-Polish relations are the best at the moment.
Yes, and to be honest, I was really afraid, probably I'm not the only one, looking last autumn at the winter coming and the reactions in the German, but not only in the German, in all European societies. If the energy prices would have been even more higher than they are, I didn't know what come. Now we have February, so maybe we will, there will be a common outcome at the end of this winter, but the war will go on for many months, probably, and there definitely is a danger of division inside. It is in Germany, of course, with the AfD, but also with the populist politics of the left. But it's the same in Poland, of course, with the peace government, with the attacks on independent media, constitutional rights, and so on. And I didn't speak of, I mean, if we speak of Hungary. So, of course, in every society, in France as well, in Great Britain, I mean, so there are dangers, and Putin is trying to inflict them, of course. As Andrei Kolesnikov said, every conflict is a good conflict for him, definitely. So in the end, I think it depends on us. It depends on the societies and on the people. To be aware what is really important in these times. And the most important thing is to defend free and liberal societies and to defend Ukraine and not to let us divide. And we have to remember this again and again.
Thank you. Now I would like to open the panel. I'm sure there are questions. There's already one there. Is the mic somewhere? Where's the microphone? Where's the, there's the microphone coming. Mm-hmm.
Victoria Sereda, Forum on Transregional Studies, Berlin. I have one question to Andrei Kolesnikov, and my question would be, you just showed us that first Russians loved or had a very positive feeling towards Germans, and then just within a month or so you have a twist. And my question is, how is it, what is your reflection? How is it possible? Because if we look, for example, at Ukrainian society and the measurements of positive attitudes toward Russians, they would drop after 2014, but not radically. And if people love or have a positive perception of certain nation, it's very difficult to twist it within 2 months or so. And I have a question to Hans Christian Petersen. My question would be, when I arrived to Jena as a fellow, I visited an exhibition which was devoted to Turks which were killed by right-wing Nazi in that city. And then I also, on the 9th of November, had to stand together with my colleagues to guard the stones of memory from the Nazis or right-wing followers in the city. And now what we listen in media, that we have already cases when there were attempts to burn the places where Ukrainian refugees are staying. And again, this would be post-Soviet Nazi or right-wing minded people. So what can be done to prevent such things and also to change the situation when me, Ukrainian, I have to stand and guard the stones of memory in Germany from Germans who are living in this community?
Thank you for these questions. Andrei Kolesnikov, can you start, please, with your answer?
I barely heard the question, and can you sum up? I have not.
Do you want to sum up?
I mean, can you, Gemma, can you sum up? Because I don't hear the question from the whole, from the screener.
Can you hear?
No, I can't hear.
Okay. It was a question about the radical shift, actually, in opinion towards Germany. No, that's what you asked about.
To some extent, yes, because as I said, Germany became the part of collective West, and it was more or less a friendly country in terms of mediating really something between the West and Russia, and now the things has been changed radically in that sense. Yes, and Germany's, despite, well, yes, maybe more or less advanced classes or sophisticated people who are following news and serious political analysis, they know about these differences between Germany's position and position of other European countries, this split between Baltic states, Poland, and some other European countries, but it is not significant in terms of mass perception of the war and mass perception of the enemy. This is more for, let's say, observers, analysts, etc., etc. So for an average Russian, this is not a problem. This is the same.
Yes, thank you for the question. What can be done against the violence, the radicalization here in Germany? I mean, there is no silver bullet, probably. I think what we all have to do is to stand up, to make visible, that the majority in this country doesn't support such acts, and it is important to not let the streets be the places for such acts, of course, and to argue, to stand up and to argue. And I mean, there were, as you said, there were several assaults at the end of last year on houses for Ukrainian refugees, already people in or just prepared to be a shelter for them. And this is, I mean, it's hard to say if it is racism in general or if it was especially against the people from Ukraine or the so-called Eastern Europeans, whoever this may be. But in fact, it was racist violence, of course. And we have to make clear at least some differentiations. As I said, all of these, or almost all of these 4.5 million people here coming from the post-Soviet states, they speak Russian, not as the only language, most of them, but most of them also speak Russian. But this doesn't mean, first of all, that they are Russian. This doesn't mean, even if they are Russian, that they in any way are supporting Putin's politics or not. You don't know that. But from the outside, from a racist point of view, they are attacked all the way. It's all the same in the racist logic, yes. And we have to make this clear that these are people living here for years or decades, some of them, and they are not responsible for this, what is happening right now. Maybe this is not a, yeah, there is no silver bullet. I have no better answer.
Yeah, there was a question here, I think.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Anneli Ute-Gabani, a political analyst. My final position was with Stiftung Wissenschaft und Politik. I would perhaps address a few words to Anna, because I would like to explain. Everything is correct what you said, but the background is perhaps even much broader. Zeitenwende, in fact, means that Germany, and this is different from all the other East and West European countries, is confronted with its entire foreign policy and industrial economic policy being in shambles. This is a word, for instance, which Ambassador Nickel, who presented his new book on Polish-German relations 2 days ago at DGAP, he used this term. Now, as far as German-Russian relations are, these are old. And you may remember also the term which Bismarck used. He didn't say Brückenbauer, he said ein ehrlicher Makler, an honest broker. So this is also traditional, and he used also, he speaking about the former and famous secret agreement between Russia and Germany in the 1880s. He also said that this is very important for Germany to have good relations with Russia at any times. So this is one aspect. Think of Rapallo, think of Moscow, of Molotov-Ribbentrop, etc. But what I want to say is that after the Second World War, it was indeed the SPD which started its policy of Détente, Entspannungspolitik, and it was always linked with trade. You remember, Wandel durch Handel was the word. And then at the Schröder era, it became Wandel durch Annäherung. But Handel began before the SPD was in power, because it began with the Mannesmann-Röhren business. So the economic relations with Russia at the time also being criticized by the United States, but it went on. It was
Sorry,
like
do you
Nord
have a
Stream 2.
question, perhaps?
Yes,
Because
sure.
there are also other people who would like to pose a question.
But maybe I would also like to, I would appreciate, it's not exactly a question which I wanted to pose, I wanted to underline certain things, but it's very important to look at the internal division. AfD is the party which is most pro-Russian in Germany, and it's in a good relationship with Marine Le Pen and other parties. And last but not least, think of the division between East German, the East Germans and the West Germans here vis-à-vis Russia and the Ukraine war. There is a huge split. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Do you want to react to the question of German and Russia?
It was not a question. Thank you for the explanation. I would say if something is traditional, I mean this Bismarck thing, it doesn't mean it should be good. So really to explain me something about me as Pole, something about Bismarck and its politics towards Russia is so, I'm confused. So thank you. Thanks.
Okay, there are other questions, I think, here.
Thank you. I'm Andrei Nowak, a historian from Kraków University. My question to Mr. Kolesnikov concerns his interpretation of contemporary stage of Putin's propaganda or narrative that there exists only collective West. I'm sure that you are right, but I see in the recent speeches of President Putin still these allusions that there are hopes for Germany and for France, these two countries, to rebel from this collective West. For example, in the last speech he gave in Stalingrad, he used the fact of presence of General de Gaulle's grandson. And when he said this phrase about German tanks attacking us again, the next sentence was, but Germany should not be accused of all evil. Actually, all other nations are staying behind Germany. So he once again tried to extend his hand to better Germany, rebelling against the real enemy, that is the real enemy being the United States, of course. So my question would be whether you agree that there are still some shades, at least, of this previous attitude that maybe in France and in Germany there is still some hope for Mr. Putin. That is one question, and another one very
simple. Just a minute, because I'm not sure if he understood.
Yes.
Did you hear the question? It was the question if there's still hope. Yes. Yeah, okay. So then
I'm saying this hope ironically, of course. You understand irony.
Perhaps we answer the question, then we'll make the second
question to Mr. Petersen.
Yeah.
I can't see any kind of hope in Putin's words, because he stressed, on my opinion, another thing, that not only Germany participated in this attack on the Soviet Union in 1940s, but members of other countries. And this meeting with de Gaulle's son, this is something marginal, because if Lavrov meets somebody, he meets only with friend, not with enemy. It means, I don't know details about the vision of the world from the side of de Gaulle's son, grandson, but I can say that he must be more or less on far right's position if Lavrov meets him in that sense. So this is the continuation of this very more or less new narrative that the whole West always attacked us since Napoleon, then it was Hitler, and now NATO continues the line of Hitler. I am following some Telegram channels, including pro-Kremlin channels, and they are very ironical about the desire of Macron, for instance, to talk with Putin. And they write, so again, Macron said that he wants to talk with Putin, but Putin had a talk with, I don't know, Uzbekistan president and somebody else. So this is kind of an irony about it. Unfortunately, no signs of hope in these words, on my opinion.
Okay, thank you so much. Actually, my short question to Mr. Petersen concerns the number. You mentioned 1 million people from Ukraine after the Russian invasion. Do you mean people that stay permanently now in Germany, or people that just entered Germany but maybe transferred later, going back or going somewhere else? And one just very short commentary to the moderator of this really extremely interesting speech. You asked, what is wrong with Brückbauer? I would say, ask those who would live under the bridge. So we don't want to live under the bridge between Germany and Russia.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, with the Brückenbauer, the people who live under the bridge have their own agency. Yeah, that's true, of course. The 1 million or plus 1 million right now is people who have been registered, entered Germany, which doesn't mean that they are still here. Maybe they could move back or could move back and came back again. So.
Are there other questions here? Yeah. There was one. Do you have other questions? Yeah, there. Mm-hmm.
Mr. Kolesnikov, do you hear me?
Can you present yourself, please?
I'm Martin Šimečka. I'm from Slovakia. Do you hear me? I would like to ask a personal question. Personal question. If you talk with us like this in Moscow, don't you feel endangered? Are you not afraid?
No, it's too late for me to be afraid of it because everyone here knows me. In December, on Christmas Eve, paradoxically or symbolically, and generally speaking, it's unpredictable because some people who are less active are prosecuted right now in Russia for any kind of statements, any kind of public appearances, any kind of individual resistance. The prosecution is very chaotic in Russia right now. But generally speaking, the combination of this label of foreign agent and then administrative prosecution, for instance, for discrediting Russian armies, this is, let's say, final call for leaving the country, because the next step could be criminal prosecution. I'm trying to be here in order to, apart from different family problems, in order to understand from inside the situation here, the perception of this horror by average Russians, and in some sense, for a researcher, it's important to be nearby the epicenter of the events in that sense.
Mr. Petersen, there are a lot of people coming because of these reasons to Germany from Russia as well, but also from Belarus. And how much does it change the diaspora? I know that's not the right word, but the post-Soviet migrant scene now with so many other people coming and having different experiences as well.
There are people who could answer this question better than me, probably. I mean, Irina Shcherbakova is sitting here. She knows much more about that probably than me. I don't want to make this speaking instead of. I mean, I'm not part of the post-Soviet migrant.
Sure, but you're a scientist.
Yes, I'm dealing. Yes, I do. I mean, it changed a lot, of course. First of all, here in Berlin, of course. I mean, there have been a lot of people who have fled Russia in the academia. there are a lot of people who came to who came to Germany now. They have rather short-term contracts at university here or research centers, and the key question is what will be afterwards, after 6 months or after 1 year, because the situation in Russia won't be any better, probably. This is an open question, and yeah, if you look at the Russian-speaking media, but also at homepages like Decoder and so on, you can see, like, of course, they try to articulate their agenda to be heard. Here right now, they have a lot to say. The German society could learn a lot of these people with all the fractures, of course, inside. It's not a homogeneous group, not at all. But they know much more about the situation in Russia right now than most of the people here. And what I also heard is a lot of complaints, and I think justified complaints about bureaucracy. Many of them, I mean, they could come here, but afterwards there were a lot of bureaucratic hurdles and points, and some of them also left Berlin again and then went to Warsaw or to the Baltic states because maybe it's easier to be there.
Yeah, there's another question now. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. My name is Maria Kravchenko. I'm from Kyiv, from Fulbright Ukraine office, and I have rather comment, not a question, and maybe this comment you wouldn't like, because, you know, the title of the panel is Political Approaches to Central and Eastern Europe. Yeah, and here we've heard thoughts from expert from Moscow, expert from Warsaw, from Berlin, but not from Kyiv. And you know, my colleagues are watching this panel by YouTube, and they are watching it from Kyiv, and I'm not sure, but maybe right now they hearing these sirens and alarms about one more airstrike attack, and also my close family members are in Kyiv. And what I'm saying, that again, in this panel we have approaches to Central and Eastern Europe, but we not include Ukraine. We don't hear its voice. I know that in other panels there will be some participants from Ukraine, and they will present, I'm sure, our point of view, but I guess that some expert from Kyiv included to this panel and joined this panel online from Kyiv also could deserve applause from this audience. Thank you.
Thank you for this comment. I'm sure the organizers have heard it. So there was a question here as well. Mm-hmm.
I have one follow-up question to Christian Petersen. I'm really missing collective self-organization and a collective voice of people from Russia here in Germany, and I would like to understand why there is so little.
Good question. I missed that too. That's right. I mean, there are individual people, of course, talking and writing and trying to get heard. But yeah, as you said, as a collective organization, I don't...
Is it because they're so different? Because the Belarusians, for example, they have Razam, which is an organization which...
Yeah, but I mean, on the other hand, you have Ukrainian organizations here, like Vice in Berlin, so, which make a lot of activism. I don't know. I'm sorry, I missed that too. That's right, it would be good to have an alternative, to have alternative points of view, perspectives, voices. It's so important to be to end not in this Yeah, and there's this homogeneous dichotomy only. There have to be different voices, and there are different voices from Russia, of course. But yeah, they should be louder. Yeah.
I don't know. Are there other questions? Yeah, there's somebody. From the Baltic states, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Edgar Sengizers, historical advisor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Latvia. I wanted to ask if also this panel was dedicated to approach to Central Eastern Europe, and you paid very brilliant attitude and then gave a brilliant analysis towards many of Putin's speeches and Russian policies. But the question was, what is interesting to me, probably Mr. Petersen could give a brief comment, whether there is some kind of Berlin Wall or Curzon line in European mindsets, then even in our audience, we do perceive Central and Eastern Europe as this little girl in the hands of some other actors. We are not speaking about European joint ideas also through this conflict situation, but we are looking on the Eastern Europe as something apart from the Western or ordinary Europe.
Yes, I try to make a long story short. Speaking about the perspectives, attitudes towards the other, in quotation marks, means also speaking about myself. So this is also the question we had at the first panel, why always this looking at Russia? And I think it has a lot to do with the self-image of the people in Germany who are focused on Russia so strongly. It's something like a symbol for Ursprünglichkeit or authenticity and things like this. There is a quote from Gregor Thum, right now, not word by word, but in the sense he said, there were always perspectives, German perspectives in Russia with a lot of stereotypes, many of them negative, some of them positives, but what is really lacking is rationality. There is a traditional lack of rationality on the view towards Russia. So this is only Russia. And to answer your question, in my opinion, there is, since the Enlightenment, Larry Wolff wrote this book, Invent in Eastern Europe. It's already a classical work. It's from 1994, in which he has shown that in many writings of West European enlighteners, there is a classical colonial dichotomy of the so-called cultured enlightened West and the dark East. Yeah, it's Europe, but not Europe, as Larry Wolff puts it. And this has, with radicalization and later on racialization as well, there are these traditions. There are also other traditions, but there are these traditions which didn't stop in 1945, of course. Then there was a Cold War, anti-communism, and so on, which is a perfect frame to continue such perspective. With other words, so I think there is a colonial tradition, in Western views, which is a homogenization as well, on the East, in quotation marks. I hope this answers your questions. Yeah.
So thank you. I think that was a very good last word for our session here, and I thank you very much. No, I was reminded that there were questions in the chat, actually. I'm sorry, I forgot about that. So we'll have a look, but yeah, I'm sorry. There were two questions, so I will put them first. One is from Nadia Korba, how to evaluate the current situation in the transition region. Do you consider that there are risks to escalation of the conflict? So I don't know if Mr. Kolesnikov, can you say something to this?
I can't assess the situation in a dilettante way. I'm not a military expert, but generally speaking, the position of Putin generates escalation all the time. I can't see any signs of good faith, goodwill for any kind of peace talks from his side. Yes, he's cornered. Yes, he's very outrageous, but this is a permanent stance for him. And in that sense, I think that this war of attrition, stalemate, permanent missile attacks, he doesn't have any other suggestions, let's say, to the world right now. It is disappointing, but for the moment, no exit from this situation. In autumn, he will have to articulate kind of a more or less new message before the presidential campaign, because he should be, let's say, imitatively elected in March 2024. There are some hopes that he must suggest peace to the population of Russia, which feels fatigue from this war, including people who are for war and who are against this war. But it all depends on maybe the situation which we should witness in autumn 2023.
Thank you. There is a second question from Veronika Aleksandrovich. How is the Russian-Ukraine war likely to shape the future of Europe? Is there any possibility that a new Iron Curtain will be created? I would like to ask you, Mrs. Kwiatkowska.
I don't know, really. This is really
looking into the future.
Yeah, a very tough question. Of course, everything depends on how this war will end. So we really don't know. From my perspective, this is a division between, for example, German point of view and Polish and Balkans, Baltic state point of view. So we are more keen to think about Russia as we don't think we have to involve Russia as it is in the future of Europe, of security in Europe, of welfare in Europe, and so on. So for us, there is a possibility to not to build maybe the kind of Berliner Mauer, but to do something not against Russia, but without Russia at least. But I think this is not a very common perspective in Germany. So Germans, like I'm talking about the political and business establishment, is thinking that there is a need to involve Russia in some way in the future of Europe.
Yeah. Thank you. I think there will be enough space on the conference to talk about this and to discuss this further. Now we have a break for those who want to have a break, but also there's an optional guided tour through the exhibition of this documentation center here, and afterwards this evening we have another panel discussion here. So thank you very much, especially to my guests here on the panel, and to you, Mr. Kolesnikov, all the best in Moscow. We were very happy to see you here, and thank you for your questions as well. Bye-bye.